You found your way to Whispers of Crimes, a quiet corner where the shadows of the past are gently told. Here, we speak of real crimes and mysteries, not to shock or scare, but to wonder, to reflect, and maybe to help you fall asleep. So close your eyes, let your thoughts slow down, and come with me into tonight's case. In the winter of 2006, the quiet town of Ipswich became the hunting ground of a silent predator. 5 women vanished, each found murdered, stripped of dignity and life. As fear gripped the streets, police raced against time to unmask the killer. But the truth was closer than anyone imagined. His name? Steve Wright, the man who walked among them unnoticed. This is the chilling story of the Ipswich Ripper. Chapter 1. A Quiet Town Shaken. Ipswich, Suffolk, a sleepy market town in eastern England, had long prided itself on its historic charm and quiet pace. But in late 2006, that peace was shattered. In a span of just 6 weeks, 5 women were murdered, all sex workers, all found naked and dumped in rural or secluded areas. The pace of the killings was terrifying. By December, national and international media were descending on the town, and the police were racing against time. This wasn't just a serial killer. This was a spree unfolding in real time. The town's underbelly, drug addiction, prostitution, and poverty had been thrust into the spotlight. These murders were not random acts of violence. They followed a disturbingly consistent pattern. Vulnerable women known to police and social services vanishing one after another. Police launched their largest murder investigation in Suffolk's history, reminiscent of the Yorkshire Ripper case decades earlier. As the public held its breath, a name would soon emerge. Steve Wright, later dubbed the Ipswich Ripper. Chapter 2. The victims, the 5 women: Tanya Nicol, Gemma Adams, Anneli Alderton, Annette Nichols, and Paula Clennell, had lives marked by hardship. Each had turned to sex work to fund heroin or crack cocaine addictions. Most of them worked in Ipswich's red light district near London Road. Despite the dangers, their dependence on drugs left them little choice. The first to disappear was Tanya Nicol, reported missing in late October 2006. Gemma Adams vanished shortly after. Then, as the community grew uneasy, Anneli Alderton went missing in early December. Soon after, the final 2 women, Annette Nichols and Paula Clennell, also disappeared. It wasn't just the frequency of the disappearances that shocked the nation. It was their gruesome discovery. All 5 women were found naked. Anneli Alderton was posed in a crucifix position. Paula and Annette had likely been killed shortly after getting television interviews warning of a serial killer. The killings felt calculated, almost taunting. Each victim was more than just a name in the headlines. They were daughters, sisters, women struggling with addiction in a system that had long failed them. Chapter 3. The Hunt for a Killer. As bodies began to appear, Suffolk police initiated a full-scale manhunt. Operation Sumac, the task force assigned to the case, drew hundreds of officers from across the UK. Forensic experts scoured the scenes. Helicopters surveyed the fields, and behavioral profilers were brought in to map the killer's mind. There were few physical clues. DNA was sparse, and the killer had left no clothing on the victims, likely to destroy evidence. However, police began using surveillance, tapping into Ipswich's network of CCTV cameras and interviewing hundreds of local sex workers. Mobile phone records proved crucial. The victims' phones had either stopped transmitting or had last pinged in similar geographic areas. Investigators cross-referenced that data with known sex buyer activity and narrowed their list. One name repeatedly came up: Steve Wright, a local man who lived just yards from the red light district. Chapter 4. Who was Steve Wright? Steve Wright seemed, at first glance, utterly unremarkable. Born in 1958 in Norfolk, he had a checkered past of failed relationships, mounting debts, and low-skilled jobs. He worked as a pub steward, a forklift driver, and even briefly as a steward on the QE2 cruise ship. But what disturbed investigators most was his familiarity with the world of sex work and his proximity to the victims. Wright had a history of using prostitutes and had previously been convicted of theft. He had been married once but divorced after infidelity. At the time of the murders, he lived in a modest apartment on London Road, less than 500 yards from where the women solicited. When police examined his car and home, things quickly escalated. They found fibers that matched clothing found on the victims, and Wright's DNA was discovered on at least 2 of them. His behavior, once innocuous, now appeared methodical and cold. Chapter 5, The Arrest and Trial. On December 19, 2006, Steve Wright was arrested at his home. The town breathed a sigh of relief, but the horror was far from over. The evidence against Wright was largely circumstantial but compelling. Fibers, DNA, and phone records that tied him to all 5 victims. Prosecutors argued that Wright had exploited the vulnerability of the women, killing them quickly and disposing of their bodies with chilling efficiency. The defense, on the other hand, insisted there was no direct evidence linking Wright to the actual murders. But the jury saw the pattern. In early 2008, after a trial that lasted nearly 2 months, Steve Wright was found guilty of all 5 murders. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order, meaning he would never be released. The verdict brought some closure, but no true sense of justice. The victims' families had lost daughters, and Ipswich had lost its innocence. Chapter 6, The Aftermath and National Reflection. The Ipswich murders left a permanent scar on the UK, not just because of the brutality, but because of what they exposed, a society that had overlooked vulnerable women for years. The case sparked intense debate about prostitution laws, addiction treatment, and police protection for sex workers. In Ipswich, the red light district was effectively shut down. Some argued this was for safety. Others saw it as another way of punishing the vulnerable. Support services for sex workers were expanded, and national discussions were held about decriminalization and regulation. The media also came under fire for how it reported on the victims. They were often reduced to prostitutes in headlines, dehumanizing them and perpetuating harmful stigmas. The case changed how many outlets covered violence against women, especially those in high-risk communities. Chapter 7, Psychological Profile of a Serial Predator. Steve Wright never confessed, and his motive remains largely speculative. However, psychological profiling offers some insight into his mind. Experts suggest that Wright fit the profile of an organized serial killer, methodical, patient, and in control. He had the ability to compartmentalize his life, holding a job and relationship while committing heinous crimes in secret. Some speculate that Wright's need for dominance, fueled by financial stress and resentment towards women, played a role. He likely found a sense of control in choosing, killing, and discarding his victims, women who, in his view, society already disregarded. Wright's lack of remorse, lack of confession, and apparent satisfaction with the crimes also suggest traits commonly seen in psychopaths' emotional detachment, narcissism, and manipulation. That he murdered 5 women in such a short time indicates an intense and possibly escalating compulsion. While the world may never know exactly what drove Steve Wright to kill, his legacy is clear: a cold, methodical predator who exploited the most vulnerable and forever changed the way Britain views serial crime and sex work. That's all for tonight's story. Another thread in the web of true crime, quietly unraveling as the night goes on. If you're still with me, thanks for listening. And if sleep has already taken you, may your dreams be peaceful and your mind at ease. I'll be here next time by the fire with another story waiting to be told. Good night, and don't forget to lock your doors.